Well, it's time to wrap up the 2026 Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. I'm Dave Shore, the consultant to the NBA, Chris Ekstrand, joining me again to break this down. And when you think about at the end of a tournament, was it a success? What areas do you look at?
Well, you want to see the play be competitive from game to game. We were very lucky this year, very few blowouts. Most of the games came down to the wire. The other thing you look for is not to just have one or two guys in the game, doing great and everybody else kind of invisible. We had a lot of games where there were 5, 6, 7 out of 8 on a team who really did well, contributed something important. And that's what we kind of expect. We bring in quality players. Everybody who's here is here because he's a good player who can do something, whether it's rebounding, blocking shots, making three-pointers, great passing. They all have some ability that got them into this level. And what we want to see is them expose what they can do and, show the NBA teams what they've got. And again, I know this is a broken record, but I'll reiterate, the European teams are getting the stream of this, the ones who didn't make it all the way across the pond here. The G League teams are, of course, rabid for these players because they're all guys who are just maybe an inch away from the NBA. So there's more than just the NBA teams here looking at them, and there's opportunities everywhere. I mean, these guys are auditioning for high-paying jobs, whether they be in the NBA, the G League, Asia, Europe, Australia. We mentioned Kendrick Davis, who was, the NBL Finals MVP this year and took his team to the championship in Australia. So, he was here 3 years ago, and that's a tale that happens year in and year out to us, is these guys go on to success somewhere.
One of the headlines that'll come out when you've got a tournament like this is who was crowned the MVP? Melvin Council Jr., who played at Kansas. What stood out about his game and why he was voted at the top?
What you see with Melvin is how resourceful he is. He's not the biggest guy out there. He's kind of wiry, even for his height. He's got good size for a point guard, but he's wiry. He doesn't knock you over with his physique. What he does is he gets in the lane and then he assesses the situation quickly and he makes a decision. Shot, pass, what's he going to do? Is he going to hit the corner? Is he going to throw a floater over a big man? Is he going to reverse pivot and see what else he can do? He's got a lot of options, so he never seems to panic when he gets into the lane. But the thing that impresses you is how easily he gets into the lane. It seems like he lives there. When you're 6'3", 6'4", and you can get into the paint anytime you want, that's a marketable skill because not every guard can do that, and he did that amazingly well. But, he is a guy who is a player of this era, in that in the past we would have a guy who played for a Dean Smith or, somebody like that and played 4 years, Mike Krzyzewski. That's not the case anymore. These guys are bouncing around. They're going up levels. He was at St. Bonaventure 2 years ago, and then he got a chance to go to Kansas. So he's experienced upward mobility, I would say. Nothing against St. Bonaventure, but you're at Kansas, bright lights at the top of the college game, and then he's here playing against the best players in the country and doing very well. So, but that's what we see is guys they're evolving as players. They're going to different situations. A lot of times going to higher teams, higher majors. And even now, he's not a finished product. He still has more to work on, and he's going to get even better. You and I could have this conversation in 3 years and say, remember when we saw Melvin Council, get the MVP in Portsmouth? Now look at him. He's in the NBA. Now he's a starter in the NBA. And we had Alex Caruso here years ago. Nobody thought the guy would even play a minute in the NBA. He went to the G League. He improved his shooting. He got better. He got to be an incredible defensive player on the ball. And now, not only is he a member of the defending NBA championship Oklahoma City Thunder, but the guy makes like $15 million a year. It's unbelievable. What a story. I mean, he went from Portsmouth to that. So, if Melvin Council can even approach that, then he'll have done very well.
All right, as we wrap it up, I want to ask one thing because the NBA draft is in June. So what happens next for most of these athletes?
Well, there's two things that are going to happen that are very prominent. One is the combines in Chicago. There's 2 combines now. There's the NBA combine, and then there's the G League combine, and they're run concurrently. One follows the other. So I'll be in Chicago for both of those, and a lot of these players will get a chance to play in either one or the other of those events. But whether they get to those events or not, they're going to have individual workouts with teams. Some of them will occur between now and then, and some of them will happen after that combine but before the NBA draft. So they have a very breathtaking schedule between now and the NBA draft. There's about 2 months. They're going to do a lot of individual workouts. They have to train so that they're ready for those individual workouts. But they're going to be in a situation where, again, whether they play in the combine or not, the bulk of these guys will be in the NBA Summer League, which follows the draft. So this is just the beginning. They have a busy few months ahead, and they're barely starting. This has been a great tournament, but this is like the jumping off point of what's going to happen over the succeeding months. But Vegas, all these scouts that I see from the NBA teams, they're all like, I don't know if I'm going to make Chicago, but I'll see you in Vegas. So, the Summer League is after the draft, and that's the next thing. And then the next thing after that is NBA training camp. And then the next thing after that is the NBA season and the G League season. So, it never stops. And this is their profession now. These guys are pros. This is what they're going to be doing for a living.
Amazing. Well, I always crown you MVP of information after this tournament. You did it again, Chris. Always great to catch up with you.
Thank you, Dave. My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you next year for the 2027 Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. Thanks for joining us.